We've all been in that position before. It's not comfortable, but we need to know what to say when someone dies. Let's start with a disclaimer, or maybe an acknowledgement, that it's not if, it's when. You know this all too well. We're going to encounter it, so having that skill set in place is going to be helpful for when we encounter this issue. So let's jump in with some specific things that you can actually say when the moment comes. Before we get to those specifics, maybe another acknowledgement is important. There's no right or wrong way to do this. I say that because a lot of times people come to me and say, oh, did I say the right thing? I'm not sure that was the right thing to say. Look, there's no right or wrong way to do this. I'll give you some guidelines about what might be more effective or what will be well received. Let's just get away from the shame and guilt that we feel if we think that we've blown it, because you probably haven't. The fact that you said anything at all is probably helpful. Some people say nothing in order to avoid saying the wrong thing, and that might not be the most helpful approach. So let's put this into context. Your relationship to the deceased or to the loved ones who are now grieving, and the setting in which you're saying this will make a difference. For example, if you're standing in line at the funeral home for the visitation or the viewing or the family meeting, that's different from sitting in someone's living room and having a very private conversation, or going to lunch with someone who has lost a loved one recently. Those settings will determine what kinds of things you will say. As you are interacting with a grieving loved one after they have just shared with you about the loss, or you've just learned of the passing of someone and you're making that connection, you might not know what to say. It's okay to say that. It's okay to say that. Oh, I have no idea what to say to you right now. I just want you to know that I'm here for you. So put that in your notes somewhere. I have no idea what to say to you right now. Or I really don't know what to say to you. I just want you to know that I'm here for you. It's a great way to start. You don't have to know what to say, and if you don't, say that. I don't know what to say. It's okay to do that. One of the most common things that people say, and it's totally appropriate to say, I'm so sorry for your loss. Incidentally, this is more powerful if we don't overuse the word sorry. I heard this in a training recently where the trainer said, look, quit apologizing for everything, because usually sorry is used as an apology. Oh, sorry about that. Sorry I did that. Or even if you step in front of someone at the grocery store inadvertently and you say, oh, sorry. If we stop using sorry so much in other settings, it might carry more meaning here. I know that's not your problem to solve right now, but look at how you use that word, and this is an important and appropriate place where we can use that word. I'm so sorry for your loss. Or I was so sorry to hear about so-and-so's passing. And you don't have to go too far beyond that. You don't have to continue, for example, and say, oh, that's such a terrible thing that's happened. Not necessarily. You can leave it with that. I'm so sorry for your loss. And then just let that sit. Now let's get into a little grammar discussion, because there are different tenses of words that we can use. When someone passes, there are a lot of feelings associated with that, obviously. I would invite you to consider using present perfect tense rather than past tense. Unless you're an English teacher, you may not have any idea what that is. I had to go look it up myself to see what is the correct form here. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Consider saying, instead of your husband was a good friend, that's past tense. See, he was. Consider saying your husband has been a good friend. Has been is present perfect, and it implies an ongoing situation. This is often easier for people who are grieving to hear, because it's so jarring and so upsetting to them that this person has passed. So when talking to them, you might consider that present perfect tense. Has been, have been, maybe better than was or were. Now you'll notice I'm not actually saying your husband is a good friend, because that feels a little weird once he has passed. And some people have a belief that those relationships go on beyond the death event. But that's why present perfect might be a better option for you. It kind of puts you between the past and the present. Without getting into all of the details about that, just consider the difference in the feeling. Your husband was a good friend. Your husband has been a good friend. Your husband is a good friend. Do you hear the difference between all of those? And the most appropriate one to use, and often one that will be accepted the best, is that middle one, the present perfect. Try it on a little bit and see how that feels. Because you found this video, you probably got someone in mind right now, and there may be others who could benefit from having this conversation. Would you just take a moment to share this video with them and maybe encourage them to subscribe? Hit that subscribe button so that we can continue to be a support. When someone dies, there are a lot of questions. And as you're talking to a grieving survivor or family member or loved one, you might avoid asking the questions that are pressing on your mind. Remember, this is about them. It's about comforting and offering assistance and support to them. Some of the questions that I'm referring to, how are you? Okay, while that is very kind and genuine in its intent, this person has also had that question about 15 times in the last 2 days. Staying away from that doesn't put them in the position of trying to cough up the same rote answer that they've been giving everyone. Here's another one. How did she die? Now, you probably already know the answer to that question if you're very close to the situation at all. It's another one that's kind of hard for people to answer repeatedly. And you're not the only one who is reaching out to or talking to someone after the death. So let's stay away from how are you? How did she die? Here's another one. Is there anything that I can do? Now, again, this is coming from a good place in your heart where you want to serve and you want to support and lift. It's also shifting the burden back to the person that you're talking to, because then they have to come up with some way that you can help them. And while it may be appreciated, you'll also probably get a response that says, oh, we're fine, there's nothing really that you can do. So the gesture is appreciated, but the question is not so helpful. So you might instead consider statements like, I'm here for you. Or, we'll be keeping your family in our thoughts and prayers. Okay, expressions of support, because that's what you intended in the first place. Now, here's another little aside. Usually, there are things that you can do, but they're not either going to think of them or actually ask you to do it. Because a lot of times when people say, is there any way that I can help? They don't really mean it. They're just like, I just want you to know that I'm here to support you. So if you really mean it, actually look for something that you might be able to do. And it could be a very simple thing. I remember when our nephew passed, and it was in another state where we had to fly out for the funeral, and family members were flying in from different places. And so a friend of the family living in the state where we were going for the funeral took it on themselves to arrange rides from the airport to the funeral venue for the family that was arriving at the airport, so that the family wouldn't have to worry about going and picking up Uncle Bob or making sure that Aunt Vicky had a ride to the venue. These neighbors and friends just took it on themselves to do it, and then they offered that. Offering something is different from asking, how can I help? So look for ways that you can actually help and take the initiative to do that so that we don't shift the burden over to the grieving loved ones. Now, I promised you that I'd come back to this because the setting, the context of your relationship, those all make a difference. Going through a visitation line at a funeral home is very different from sitting in someone's living room or going to lunch with a close friend. And those settings can make a big difference. Now, let's go to the to the more intimate, the more private setting. If you are really close to someone who is grieving the loss of a loved one, or you're really close to the deceased and now you're talking to a family member, that conversation can open up a lot more. But we don't want to put any pressure on it. So instead of drilling or asking specific questions, you can simply open up the possibilities. And one way to do that would be to say, hey, I am here for you. You can share as much or as little as you want. Okay, now write that phrase down or just remember it. Think about it. I'm here for you. I want you to know you can share as much or as little as you want. So we're taking the pressure off of them. If they want to spill the beans about everything, if they want to debrief, and some people do, okay, then you've just given them a venue where they can do that. And you're simply going to be there to listen and support. If they don't feel like talking about it, you don't have to insist that they do. I remember I was sitting with my aunt recently who lost her husband. And she said, I don't want to talk about it. And I said, that's fine. You can share as much or as little as you want. And it turned out she did want to talk about it a little, but not a lot. She gets to decide that, see? She gets to drive that. So as a supporting loved one, we can use that phrase to open up the door and also to take off the pressure so that they don't feel like we're really hounding them. I hope that you found those suggestions helpful. Unfortunately, it's something we're going to run into. Putting yourself in a positive position is the best thing that you can do. Cue up this video next, how you can reprogram your own mind to stay strong and positive. I think you're going to find some helpful things there as well.